It's the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Glad you can spend some time with us. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Hi, Alan.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Good morning. And we have a guest joining us for this edition from Understanding AI, a new writer there, Kai Williams. Hi, Kai.
Hi, good morning. It's nice to be talking with you all today.
Well, you have a great background, Kai, and are supported by a Tarbell Fellowship at Understanding AI. That's from the Tarbell Center for AI Journalism. This past week, Waymo released new safety statistics, and the piece you have written for Understanding AI is titled Very Few of Waymo's Most Serious Crashes Were Waymo's Fault. Give us the overview, I think, to start with. You looked at, I think, something like 45 major Waymo crashes.
Yeah, so Waymo releases this new safety data, and we want to kind of check. There's a lot of ways you could check what whether they're kind of being realistic and saying that their cars have been safer. But one way to check is by law, they're required to report all of their accidents to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. So every time, even if it's like someone nudges them and barely makes contact, any crash, they're required to report. Um, and there's a lot of really small crashes. So we wanted to focus on the most serious, those that either someone reported an injury or an airbag went off. I was looking at the last basically 6 months from February to mid-August, and there were 45 crashes with injuries or airbags like that in the past 6 months. And so I went through all of them, and I want to caveat, I think it's important to note that we only, for most of these, have Waymo's side of the story because they're the ones reporting to the NISTA. But even so, there are some crashes that clearly aren't Waymo's fault, and that's a big category. So for instance, a lot of times a Waymo is stopped at an intersection, and then a car from behind rear ends the Waymo. And even though we're only hearing Waymo's side of the story, it's pretty clear that it was not Waymo's fault because they were stopped in an appropriate place. And so going through most of these crashes, almost all of them had a pretty clear story of, oh, that's not Waymo's fault. But there were a couple that are less clear.
I mean, the one you lead off with in the piece here was Waymo's fault, but you point out had nothing to do with the technology.
Yeah, so the clearest example where Waymo is at fault was they were driving in Austin, Texas, and a wheel came off, and no one else was involved in the crash, luckily. But the passenger reported an injury, and like that is clearly Waymo's fault because no one else could have knocked the wheel off. But that's also less interesting because it's not really Waymo's self-driving software that it was at fault. It was some mechanical issue.
Well, Kai, what I really loved about your article and what you wrote is that you very, in some sense, methodically and I guess with complete openness, went through and discussed the crashes. I like to call them crashes. They're not accidents, they're crashes that Waymo has been involved with in trying to deliver driverless mobility. And of course, safety is an enormous issue in this whole process. And of course, we want to be perfectly safe. I want to be perfectly safe. I mean, my goodness, what else would we want? But really, to be perfectly safe, I guess as I like to say, we'd stay home all the time, and then the house would burn down, and I'd burn down, and I'd die, and whatever. Geez, I shouldn't have stayed home. Shouldn't have taken that risk. I should have taken another risk. I also like to tell my students that I guess what makes, in some sense, life worth living is that we don't know the future and there are some risks. Otherwise, it'd be pretty boring to just not have risks all day long. I mean, who didn't, oof. We should be so lucky. God, why didn't you make us this way? I mean, come on, you failed us. I guess it was the app, whatever. Oh, that was another thing that got us in trouble. Never mind. We digress. But safety is a really critical issue in all of this, and there's a lot that's written and there's a lot that's discussed and and the sky's falling, who knows what, or man, there's no problem. And what I really appreciated about what you wrote is you just said, okay, here it is. Let me, with open eyes, look at it, write about it. Here it is, and I certainly hope everyone reads what you wrote. And I think I try to say it in the Smart Driving Car e-letter. And that's what I really like about it. And that's why I'm happy that you're here with us. And so the issue is that, as you identified, okay, there are some situations in which it's with, oh my goodness, you've got to report every crash. I mean, even when every crash is reported by one entity, what do you compare it to? And if you go through the whatever government statistics or whoever accumulates the information about what you're going to compare it to, because I think you have to make a comparison. You can't look at it just as one particular entity. You have to look at it safety in comparison to how we currently get around, unless you don't want us to get around anymore, which might be a certain thing. So therefore, it really is. And unfortunately, with when one entity reports everything, and you're comparing it to other things that don't report everything for good and bad reasons, then you can't do the comparison. And then, of course, when you do a comparison, you really want to compare it under the same situation, but of course, no situation is identically the same. I mean, mathematically, boom. I mean, even the real line, you can't ever land on the same point. I mean, if you get really crazy about this stuff. So the comparisons end up being really tough to make, and everybody would like to think if we're going to discuss this, we have to discuss it in the same context. And I think you've done a good job with that, and you, especially with what you consider to be the crash that was most for probability very close to one, that it was Waymo's fault. Okay, that wheel coming off, and then all of a sudden you say, "Oh my goodness, why is this?" I would say, "Oh my goodness, why is this in our comparison with driverless technology?" Because this is not have nothing to do with the driver. It's a mechanical part. And of course, where I end up in my own, like I say, learned opinion is that if one looks at crashes in the automobile mobility system, um, an overwhelming percentage of them involve a human in the loop. And if you look at the human's involvement in the loop, in an overwhelming percentage of those things, some of us, not necessarily everybody doesn't agree on anything anyway, but at least most of us see that it is, the safety problem is really a human misbehavior problem. So when you look at drinking, when you look at face in a phoning, or whatever you want to call it, when you look at excessive speeding, when you look at road rage, when you look at, I was looking over here and didn't see it. It's the human in the loop, and I like to call it misbehavior. It's misbehavior. We're not supposed to behave that way. You go to any driving school, anybody gives you a license to drive, they say you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, shouldn't be running stop signs. Shouldn't even be running yield signs. So then the issue when you get there is that really if NHTSA or some uh, public agency who's trying to really do a good job of this really should be looking at doing a comparison as to if one's certainly trying to deal with safety, man, how do we deal with a human in the loop? And you can deal with a human in the loop business trying to behave, Kornhauser. I mean, I'm the worst misbehavior, but it's behave, and I've been told to behave for I won't tell you 39 years. I'm 39 years old, whatever. And so out of that process, I still haven't paid attention. Okay, unfortunately, and I don't know what NHTSA should do to get me to behave. I mean, I wish they would, but I mean, if you really want to solve this safety problem, it's the behavior. And of course, some of us think that the other way to solve the safety problem, Waymo including, is say, take the driver out of the loop. Okay, and of course, hopefully out of that process, make it so that the driver doesn't even want to be in the loop, is happy to not be in the loop. So then we can start taking a look at what the heck it is. And I think it should be a comparison of it in the safety business versus driver out of the loop versus driver in the loop. So if you do that, then of course your decision, not to say how you reached your decision, but this first one, driver's not in the loop here. I mean, it's the machine, something fault mechanical thing of the machine. It's not driver in the loop, and driver out of the loop shouldn't be part of the comparison. Shouldn't even be mentioned. I think is at least that's what I interpreted you said, and I thought you said what I interpreted exceedingly well, and other people should realize it. And we should not go to, hey, what is driver in a loop, driver out of a loop comparison, and let's go to those. So that's a long lead into the rest of your article, which I think is fabulous. But again, it's my personal view,
Right.
as I see it.
Alan, he did ask the question in the piece, can we trust the statistics from Waymo that claim its vehicles get into injury-causing crashes 60% less often than human drivers, which gets to what you're pointing out. How do you compare? And Kai, tell us about that.
So I hope in the future to write a more comprehensive piece looking at Waymo statistics. So I don't want to say too much here because I haven't put the work in to kind of carefully read through their methodology. When Tim at Understanding AI has talked with kind of automotive safety experts in the past, they've generally been positive about Waymo's safety research, that it's serious and in good faith, and some of it's been peer reviewed. And of course you always still want to have that grain of salt, but it is a really difficult question to benchmark. And I think Waymo's done one of the upsides of this whole autonomous driving thing is it's telling us more about all the small things that happen that don't get all the small crashes that happen that don't get reported usually because they're not serious enough to go to the insurance or the police. And it seems like they do pretty careful things to balance out the fact that the types of miles that Waymo drives are not on freeways and are constrained to relatively small geographic areas in major American cities. So from what I've seen, they seem thoughtful, but I guess my best answer is come back to me in a couple months when I've read things more carefully and talked to a couple of outside people. And I don't want to comment too heavily right now because, as I said, I haven't gone through the work to have a well-informed enough opinion on that yet.
Well, congratulations on taking that approach, Kai.
Yeah, I think that's great. You've taken that approach, but I think you're cutting yourself short. Okay, and so I'll extend what I've read and what you said, and in some sense, and I've always marveled at how careful Waymo has approached this whole thing, and how seriously they've taken the safety thing, and realize actually from the very beginning that if they're not safe, they're not in business. Okay, I mean if they can't solve the safety, if they can't be reasonably safe, and being reasonably safe means well, whatever the heck that ends up meaning, because society's going to have to decide what the heck that reasonable is. They're not in business. Now we're arguing about what is reasonable, and one can have a very analytical whatever approach to it. Although unfortunately, that very analytical approach is fraught with all the caveats that you just said, and so still somebody's going to say, "Well, I mean, actually, probably freeways are easier to be better than we are in freeways than it is in locals." But that's just my opinion, I mean, so in some sense, somebody who throws that stone, I mean, really, you're throwing the stone the wrong direction. It is really tougher to do it, my opinion, in places where they're doing it on San Francisco streets, with all the chaos that actually happens there, with as we all know what happened to GM Cruise. I mean, it's the misbehavior that goes on around you is that you've got to sit there and dodge the misbehavior, and then you're being called to blame. Okay, I mean, if everybody else was behaved, there wouldn't be a problem. The rear end stuff. Oh my goodness, it must be Waymo's fault. They stopped at a stop sign. I don't. Boom, I hit them. Okay, why didn't they go through? I mean, are people really? I mean, really, you want to blame Waymo for behaving when you didn't behave? I mean, which dog ate your homework? I mean, come on. I mean, it's almost ridiculous, the stuff that comes out of some of this. I mean, what we're supposed to have we're, I'm sure, I shouldn't speak for Waymo. They can program those things to go through stop signs, just like I go through stop signs. Therefore, we won't have any more rear enders in there. Okay, great. Okay, really? That's what you want out of putting that stuff out there? Cut it out. Okay, so I get I get maybe too animated when some of these comparisons are put out there. I think that what I think you've pointed out, and why I think you're independent looking at it. You really don't have a horse in this race, and you pointed out that, my goodness, boy, they've been good.
Yeah.
Boy, they've been good. And oh my goodness, we don't know if they're lying, cheating, and stealing here. Okay, we don't. But I don't know.
I
Go ahead.
I think you're right. Like in comparison to especially other robotaxi companies, who are already, a lot of them are decent. Like I think that Cruise um was a decent robotaxi company where their technology was again pretty safe. Um, and then they had this kind of terrible accident that kind of ended the business. So all of the
Terrible crash. It wasn't an accident. It was a crash, and it was a crash that was induced by somebody hitting, running somebody in a crosswalk, okay, and flinging him.
yeah,
Okay, that's what it did. And that guy never got, guy or gal never. The police, I don't think, even looked for. I shouldn't blame San Francisco police for not looking for him. Did they ever catch that guy? Are you kidding? And the company ends up having to be closed down, and everybody, and who knows how many billions of investment down the tubes. Okay, I mean, it's and saying, oh my goodness, maybe they weren't as safe as they could. I mean, if a person gets flung in front of you, F equals ma doesn't help you. And then instead of being in the crash avoidance business, which is what Waymo is in, which is crash avoidance business, you're in the crash mitigation business. But guess who's in the crash mitigation business? NHTSA. Okay. The things that NHTSA does is done and is done in safety is seatbelts, airbags, crush zones. What are those things? They're crash mitigation. Okay. Yes, finally, they're saying maybe automated emergency braking systems have to be in all cars so that you don't go boom. You go, okay, all right.
But
And so, there's a real difference here. But go ahead.
what I want to say is that I think Waymo has clearly done a lot of work, and I appreciate that when going through this data, they don't redact their narratives. They don't redact their definitions,
Right.
and then they provide more details voluntarily after the fact with a couple months lead time, like the specific location, which can sometimes be helpful, and the specific date, which NHTSA redacts, and also I think whether or not the cruise crash was, no matter the kind of specifics of that crash, I think what that shows is all of Waymo's incentives are against serious crashes, like very, very, very heavily. In that, also, like at least two companies, Cruise and Uber's self-driving program, have basically been ended by bad crashes. And so it's clear that Waymo is trying really, really hard to avoid that, potentially, ironically, at the cost of slowing down adoption of a safer technology. I don't blame Waymo because I think it's clear where their incentives are to be very cautious. And so, for instance, with freeway driving, I'm guessing that they probably could expand to freeways at this point. Like they're comfortable enough with their employees taking Waymos to work, going on a freeway. But they're still in testing, and I think part of that is if you mess up on a freeway, then you have to be much more confident in your technology to be able to deal with the consequences. Whereas off the freeway, like if you're on a city street, it's almost always safe to slam on the brakes if you're unsure or if something weird comes up. But you can't do that while going 70 on the freeway. And so I think I want to be cautious and careful and not make too many claims about the safety research. And I think it's fair to say that Waymo has a well-deserved reputation of being careful and being cautious and being and making good, safe technology.
Well, I'll go even farther. They definitely are, with no remorse on any of it. I mean, no caveats on any of it. There is no doubt that they have been absolutely focused on safety and so on and so forth, and they do it, and they whatever, and it is a constant. And I don't question it at all. I don't question GM Cruises either. Okay, they got stuff, and in some sense, don't think I really ever questioned Uber's in the Elaine Herzberg crash. I just, my goodness, people are people. Uh, you know, whatever, and maybe they should have been more careful and not gone 41 miles an hour, been going 39, because of course the automated emergency braking system. We could point to who wrote the code and so on to do that, and in some sense, a lot of this stuff ends up coming down is that we don't know what we don't know. I mean, it's a situation that existed with respect to Cruise. I mean, I, I don't know if any of us ever imagined a scenario in which a hit and run driver would hit a pedestrian in a crosswalk and fling that pedestrian in front of our vehicle, and somehow don't know, it didn't have the sensors to determine whether or not she was still there, and geez, decided to get out of the way of causing any more problems, which is sort of a standard practice on roads, in which you, oh, well, it's, as far as we know, it's minor, and pull over. I mean, the fact that they misinterpreted their data set to not realize she was there. I would, and didn't happen to have a camera in the bumper to look for such a thing, because nobody ever thought that there would be such a thing. Although, guess what? Now people have cameras in the bumper. And I sure hope that all these systems sit there and look, hey, can we go over anything that's in front of us when we start? Why? Because we learned something out of the Waymo, the cruise thing, and as far as I'm concerned, we learned it so well that it won't happen again. It won't happen with Waymo. I would imagine their stack looks at before they start out every time. Is there anything there? So in some sense, the whole process of having these crashes, reason they're reported, and real reason they're reported, is to fix them so they don't happen in the future. It's not that anybody, Waymo, certainly not Waymo out there like a bunch of loose cannons on some deck just running havoc over safety. I mean, come on. I mean, how can anybody even suggest that? Okay. But I think what I see you helping do in doing this is taking a fresh look at some of this, putting it very well out there for people to read. And I think we can move on from the safety issue to how in the heck do we now get some value out of what we've created? Okay. Besides safety, for the key safety improvement that we've done is everybody that rides Waymo is not driving. Okay. And I'm sure that everybody that rides Waymo is certainly would not ever misbehave when they're driving. Oh my goodness. That's not their customer set. Of course, they're the perfect people in the world, but maybe there are a few that are not there that would have misbehaved. I wonder why. Why aren't we capturing some of that value? And in fact, moving to a system. And so when one compares safety, at least my view on this thing is that, oh, man, they are safe. And in some sense, we aren't even counting the fact that they're taking misbehaviors, people that misbehave. Maybe it might just be one, maybe just two. Who knows how many it is? Whatever. Okay, off the roads, so that they're not misbehaving, causing. So actually, they're making the whole damn thing much safer. And then, of course, what's not pointed out and what NHTSA doesn't collect and is, what about all the situations which they haven't reported yet, in which case somebody was misbehaving, for which their system was the difference and not crashing with that misbehavior. I think Waymo's biggest challenge is not their system crashing. It's the avoiding of situations that misbehavior by the driving public would cause the crash. Okay. And as you pointed out, some, running into the back end. But I suspect they also look in the back and how many of these situations where somebody would have, and they eased out into the stop sign and kept the person from running into them because they were going to run the stop sign. And of course, the second article in the e-letter, talks about, with the Tesla system, about this woman that says, hey, the system kept her from hitting somebody that runs through the stop sign.
And I certainly think it's
But my question on that is, Waymo doesn't even report that. NHTSA hasn't even asked them to report that. Why shouldn't that be counted on their safety side? Along with, a discussion of how many, whatevers they've had, wheels falling off.
I
Sorry.
mean, it may be a computational thing where you probably would want to do a lot of simulations. Like if you're Waymo and you're trying to make that claim, like occasionally you can show a video, but solve like kind of saying the counterfactual that like
Yes.
human in the same position.
They do that. They actually run simulations. Like I know they do that. Okay, they do that. Okay, they know it, but NHTSA hasn't asked them to present that as part of the safety case that they're out there. I mean, if they go out there and do that, I mean, people, who knows what? I don't know what people's reaction would be. Whatever. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I think it is suggestive in the data that a large number of crashes aren't just not Waymo's fault, but seem difficult to defensively drive about. Like even if I'm a great defensive driver, it's hard for me stopped at a light to do anything about the car directly behind me.
Yeah.
Whereas there are comparatively few crashes that have occurred in intersections. Instead of the like 20 rear ends, there were, I think, maybe 5 that occurred in intersections, which I don't know the safety data off the top of my head, but I'm guessing for the average human driver, the ratio is a little bit like fewer rear ends is the main crash, and there's more kind of crashes that may not have been a human's fault, but may have been avoidable, with slightly quicker reflexes or something. And you see at least 2 of the crashes that kind of occurred when a car strayed into Waymo's right of way. They'd crashed into something else and then just gotten like thrown into like very quickly, in a way that, of course, I wasn't there. I don't know, but is plausible that it was completely unavoidable from Waymo's perspective. And so I think you can still kind of infer all the crashes that didn't happen from the data by comparing what crashes show up less than you'd expect given the total number of crashes that Waymo has reported. And I think that Waymo probably has done some research on this angle, and it's definitely something I'll be paying attention to when I sit down and read what they've written. But even not having done that, I think you can see some evidence.
This is terrific work, Kai. And Alan, you've got a link to the full piece in the newsletter. The site is understandingai.org. And elsewhere in the newsletter, and Kai, we want you to participate as much as you want to, looking at some of the other headlines here. Alan, from Smart Driving Cars, Adam Jonas, Morgan Stanley, AI is about to get physical. And you had, I guess, an up close look at this.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it was such a treat to have Adam in my class on last Monday, and so instead of making us look at the video, he actually did it, for us and went through the slides, and then of course had some other comments to make along the way, and we had an absolutely wonderful give and take, a question and answer period afterwards, but. But what I can share with everyone is at least point them to the link of his newest um, um, sort of lecture on where AI is going and so on. I also made sure that Adam is certainly aware of understanding AI and you, Kay, and Timothy certainly, because I guess Adam I guess Adam not only is the head research analyst for automotive that he's been for, I don't know, 15 years or now, and so on, but is now encompassing AI, and I guess his views on where AI is going are just whatever. I mean, they're Adam Jonas views. For those of you that don't know Adam, I think Adam made the call on Tesla 15 years ago, and I think a lot of people who paid attention to him got very rich. Damn it, I buy high, sell low. I should have paid attention to Adam then. Then Adam's a good friend. I'm going to pay attention to him now, though.
Terrific.
And
There's more on Waymo in the newsletter,
yeah,
Alan. From The Verge, this headline, Robotaxis has public transit. Waymo thinks so. And this is about the company's Robotaxis joining the Flex microtransit service in Chandler, Arizona. $2 a ride, half that for seniors and wheelchair users uh, as well, and free for middle and high school kids.
I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess Alphabet is contributing to public good. I have fantastic. Unless they actually can put it out there at the price is the cost, or the price is the cost plus profit. Oh my goodness! I mean, when did they become that good? Um, um, are they that good? I mean, they're great on safety. I didn't realize it was that cheap. I didn't realize they could give wheelchair rides. How can they give wheelchair rides for $1? Never. I think whatever. And then I have a little discussion there about difference between cost and price. But I don't know who's picking up the tab. I guess it's really I
Well, maybe
think Alpha.
maybe that's in your next headline. Waymo gets the green light for airport service in San Francisco.
Uh,
They're going to pick
uh,
up the tab.
uh, I don't think we have enough rich people going to airports to pick up the tab in Chandler. But maybe I haven't done the balance sheet and the arithmetic on that. Of course, I don't have the source of the data. I think I do put some things in the e-letter about New Jersey Transit struggles to do an equivalent thing in New Jersey, and when you base, not to jump to the bottom line, but when you go to it, the public subsidy for those rides is $88 each. So I guess as long as the public's willing to pick up the tab on 88, then let's do it. But I don't know. I don't know how you scale that. I mean, yeah,
I think
hopefully, yeah,
there's an interesting comparison in that one of the recent new like entrants to the robotaxi. I mean, they've been around for a while, but is May Mobility, who isn't backed by like a really big tech company, and so has been forced to like find profit centers earlier. And it seems like a lot of their offerings are public transportation related, like in Ann Arbor. So it's interesting that Waymo's entering.
yeah, and that's very much to their credit that they are looking at providing mobility to those who most need mobility, and a better mobility than without them. Society has put out there for these folks, and so um, I think it's what I'm trying to do also. But whatever, we'll see whether or not I'm any more successful than somebody else on it. It's very tough, and of course, what made mobility, um, you know, what's picking up the tab there? I don't know what's picking up, but I might speculate. I like to spec. I mean, I throw stuff out there. That's why people don't like me. I just throw stuff out there. Um, they're the venture industry has to be putting it out there, I guess, because that's typically what the venture industry does with startups. They're a startup, or it's some sort of public entity that's as as we taxpayers in New Jersey are picking up the tab on the $88 shortfall on each of those rides that New Jersey Transit's demand responsive system accumulates. And so, as long as we have that, that's fine. I mean, I think the real inroads in, let's say, public transit or what is public transit needs to be, my goodness, is it possible, or where could one provide this and not require public subsidy? And we'll wait and see.
Alan, in the newsletter, you have this. McKinsey had a report from a conference it held, and it's headlined, "The inflection point has arrived, Waymo's vision for the future of mobility share." And the link is to a video that's been edited down some, and you had some comments about that.
Yeah, I think they must have edited all the good stuff out of it. But again, that's my opinion. Nobody, my goodness. I thought McKinsey was better than that, but never mind.
From Business Insider, Uber's CEO says robotaxis could displace drivers in 10 to 15 years and create a big societal question. He's talking about many ride-hailing drivers losing their jobs. And that's something I guess everybody talks about.
Yeah, I of course don't see it. I respectfully disagree. I mean, if you look at the market that ride hailing, it's not ride sharing. Some people call it ride sharing. There's no ride sharing. I use it. I guess I use it all the time. I've claimed I will never again drive to Newark Airport because it's very simple. I mean, Newark Airport charges so much to park that I can't afford it, and it's cheaper for me to basically take Uber or Lyft to Newark Airport, and I get chauffeured. Ooh. And it's like wonderful, and so on. And I don't have to worry about it. I can actually do work while I'm going to the airport. Do I do work, or am I playing games? Oh, no, of course I'm working. I mean, my goodness, I'm making use of my time. It's just like all the academic reports say that I'm going to do if I get to be chauffeured, of course.
So
and I think that's not going to go away. I just don't think that's. I mean, my goodness, when the car pulls up, oh, Professor Kornheiser, can I take your bag and put it in the trunk? I mean, Waymo can't do that for me. There's nobody there to take my bag, hold my hand, open the door, be nice to me. Okay. So in fact, the market for the gig worker to earn some amount of money to begin to feed their families, I don't think it's going to go away.
Kai, do you have thoughts on that?
I disagree a little bit. I can imagine there being at the top level of the market, if you can afford it, for someone to grab your bag, and for it to be a luxury item. But I think if you can manufacture enough of these cars, which should happen eventually, though it's been a little slow thus far, then the comparison between the car driving and you have to pay the driver versus the car driving, period, without any driver needing to be paid. I'm guessing that you can eventually offer a lower price point to the where for most people they're going to prefer the cheaper, safer autonomous vehicle. And that doesn't
safer than an Uber driver. Well, I guess I want to support Uber and Lyft and so on, and there's a lot of stones thrown against their drivers and so on, and my experience with their drivers has been nothing but superb, and didn't misbehave, and even though John Nash and his wife were essentially killed on the New Jersey Turnpike by a taxi driver, okay. Now that's a horrendous claim, probably misbehaving, okay, but or I shouldn't put probably. He might have been misbehaving, okay, which is absolutely tragic. At least tragic, I mean, John Nash. I mean, how and whatever. John Nash, Nobel Prize laureate in economics for Nash equilibrium, in case you didn't know, whatever.
Still can watch the
Movie
movie
made
now.
about him, whatever. Okay, whatever. I knew him. Okay, whatever.
But
the issue, my issue, okay, my issue with respect to the airport thing is when I go to the airport, most of the time, okay, I'm not paying. I got an expense account that pays. I don't know what percentage of people that go to the airport are going on an expense account, but most of the people go on an expense account. They go on an expense account. They tend to tip really well. Okay, Uber drivers and Lyft drivers know that. It is the market for them to be able to somehow be able to accumulate enough money to pay for the car, pay for the gas, pay for all the other stuff, pay for do all that, spend all the time waiting for whatever between and so on, empty reposition themselves, to be able to scrape a living, which is what they're doing in the most part. And I think, and I certainly hope that that at least those of us that do that and go to the airport that way, which is not every person that goes to and from the airport, but so on, sort of continue to frequent the Ubers and Lyfts and provide a work opportunity for those folks, which I don't know if if you really look at them, it's been a godsend to them to have Uber, Lyft. Why? Because those tend to be people who don't. I tell my students, don't want to work for the man. Okay, they want the independence, the opportunity to be able to choose their times, when they do it, when they do it, and the gig worker concept that Uber brought to the world with respect to this is as valuable as the gig worker concept that Apple brought to the world with their app store. For coders who just want to write code and really don't want to or don't care about marketing, about sales, about and they can just sit in their basement of their parents' home and write code. All of a sudden, they got an outlet for their creativity because of the App Store. And in some sense, that's really the value of what ride hailing brought to this world. It gave people who needed rides, instead of driving themselves, be able to use them with all kinds of value to them, and provide them a reasonable work environment for the people that do that. I hope, and in those of us that develop driverless cars, I would hope we wouldn't go in there and ruin that market for them. Okay, leave that one to them. Okay, all right. There are so many other needs in our society for really efficient, affordable mobility that can change people's lives for the positive. Not in some sense make no difference to me as to whether it's automated or not. So therefore, it doesn't provide me any value. but all of a sudden detracts from the value gained by the person that's doing the job. I mean, we should be looking at this technology, if it in fact is safe, which I think it is. How do we use it to improve society first? Let's use it there. We have so few of them. There are 1.1 billion person trips a day in the USA. 1.1 billion. Do we really have to go after the 0.1% going to the airport? Is that really the place where we should be putting this thing? Is that really where the $330 billion that have been invested in this technology, is that really? And it's finally safe, and we're not finally over, as you pointed out, over the safe hurdle. We're not going to apply this to that, solve that problem. I don't know.
Kai, if you didn't know, Alan is the co-author of a book called The Real Case for Driverless Mobility.
So, I've gone, people are sick of hearing me on this thing, and they are, but really, there, unfortunately, this is a great country, and many of us have cars. We have mobility that comes out of our ears. Okay, and safe mobility that comes out of our ears. And here comes another one, another safe mobility that comes out of our ears. But my goodness, this one is really important, because if it is safe, which I think you've pointed out, I believe you, it's safe. Then we should be looking at, where do we put this to use, where it really delivers the most value. In other words, for what exists, pump it up there, pump the value proposition. Not go someplace where the value, and you're barely, and it's even questionable as to whether or not you're providing any value. And if you're really worried about your bottom line, which you should be, this is a capitalistic society here, and Alphabet deserves to make a good return on this moonshot, because it is supposed to be a moonshot. Whether it gets to be 100x or not, well, it's got a long ways to go. I don't know. I think we should also be looking at where can we provide, where can we apply this, where people really need a ride. And whatever we've had up to this point in time to give them a ride just isn't working. Uber and Lyft are too expensive for them. Okay, so they're walking.
Alan, this might be a good time for you to give us an update on handy rides, if we're going to include one here.
I guess, we're still alive, we gave revenue rides last week, we're very happy where we are. We'll see where it gets to.
One more headline from the newsletter from Inside EVs, and I think you alluded to this a little bit ago. The car that stopped itself, Tesla Collision Avoidance Assist, lives up to its name. This was about an incident posted on TikTok, of course, that went viral. No FSD or autopilot involved here. A Tesla appeared to detect a rapidly approaching vehicle that went through a red light and engaged emergency braking before the driver could react, and avoided a collision here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to take the driver out of the loop and make it driverless. It's another thing to put this stuff into all of our vehicles to again do the defensive driving that we somehow seem to be have limited capabilities of doing, to avoid the misbehavior that's out there, because it's not no misbehavior out there. I mean, everything's easy. Everything easy. All this stuff does it. I can't see how anybody can suggest it doesn't. Okay. the misbehavior out there, and then to deal with the misbehavior, finally, last year or a year and a half ago, finally NHTSA said, finally, everybody has to have an automated emergency braking system in there. Okay. And it should be automated emergency braking system that really is triggered so as to avoid the accident rather than being crash mitigation, rather than just reducing the severity of the crash, excuse me for using the wrong name. I mean, that's where it should be. The challenge, the real challenge with doing that is, of course, the false positive. Okay, since technology can't be made perfect, there is a probability that there will be a false positive. And unfortunately, when the false positive occur, then why did my car break? I don't know. Oh, I got to take it back. This is 11 here. Give me my money back. And no manufacturer can put a product out there in which you're going to use it for a while, and then you bring it back and say it's a lemon, I want my money back. And so, of course, the way we've been getting around this before is, heck with it. We won't even try to help you. Go ahead and crash. It's your problem. It's your car. You're in control. Go do it. I mean, as opposed to sitting there and saying, oh, I was hitting the gas and the damn thing hit the brake. Oh, my goodness, it went over my desires. Why did it do that? It must not be any good. Where in fact, you don't even know that it saved your butt. Has happened here. And at least this one, unfortunately, it's one viral thing. How many times this happens? We don't even know. NHTSA hasn't demanded that it be reported. They should demand that be reported as much as they demand that the crashes be reported from Waymo and the others. And I think we talked about it before. So come on, NHTSA, improve your act. Sorry,
Kai,
yeah, and I should
Kai
say,
had mentioned before.
Yeah, I should say, understanding AI has nothing to do with my irrational discussion here. So they are totally exempt from, not to be, oh my goodness, and maybe they'll choose not appear with me because I'm so
opinions
irrational.
Expressed,
Whatever.
et cetera, et cetera.
Are just mine. Okay, come after me. I mean, there's very little left of me anyway. So come after me. Whatever.
I was going to point out that Kai said before. Kai was talking before that if they can, when we were talking about replacing drivers,
yeah,
et cetera, that if Waymo can manufacture or others can manufacture enough vehicles, we left out the Tesla aspect of all this, which may have all these vehicles on the road already with lots of capabilities. So
yeah, well,
that
it's not
remains to
only
be seen.
Tesla, but I think also one has to give credit um, uh, to Toyota. Certainly has been out there. I think if you look, if people we've discussed it before, the IIHS testing and videos for years have been showing us which one of these automated emergency systems work and don't work. I think we should point out Subaru with their eyesight has been absolutely out in leading to make sure that these things, do set off early enough to avoid the crash, as opposed to just mitigating it. I've commented about Mercedes. Unfortunately, whatever. I think they wait till 1.6 seconds the collision before they detonate these things. I think it's waiting a little too long. But we can disagree or whatever. I think the whole industry needs to go to a point in which, yes, absolutely, we need to these things need to be mandatory in all the cars, and they need to be actuated in time to avoid the collision as opposed to just mitigating it. And mitigate it if that's all you can do. Absolutely. I'm not saying don't do any mitigation, but damn it, don't wait around, just to cover your butt because you're not sure, which is really what happened in the Uber situation. But never mind, we won't go back through and rehash that whole thing.
Well,
sorry, Kay, we dragged you into a lot of stuff. Really, Kay.
It's Kai.
No, seriously. I mean, I wrote to Timothy, immediately after I read what you wrote, and I just said it's a really good piece.
And thank you so much for taking the time with us, Kai. Really well done. And again, it's understandingai.org. Thanks, Kai.
And thanks to Kai, and thanks to Timothy for putting the whole darn thing together. I think it's anybody that's dealing with any things in AI should be subscribing and reading that. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, and thank you all for the invitation.
Okay.
And you can find us at smartdrivingcar.com. My tech reports are at techstination.com. Thank you for watching or listening. Have a great weekend.